We might be live. Let us know if we are live. If we are, I'm Brandon, your author for the evening. And we have special guest star Howard Lyon.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Howard. For those who don't know, Howard is an excellent artist of many different things, including some of your favorite Magic cards, and did the artwork for Tress of the Emerald Sea for us.
Yes.
And so we've been delaying having this special guest appearance because we wanted to try to get as many people to have Tress as possible.
Excellent.
Because we've had shipping delays on it. But this is basically the last day before the next book starts going out, Steve Argyle's book. So we thought this was a perfect day to finally have you on.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So we will be taking questions from the chat and things like that,
Okay.
but I'll probably fire a few at you first.
Sounds good.
Tell us your story. How did you become an artist? How did you find your way to fantasy art?
Yeah. So I was one of those kids who always loved to draw, which I think most kids do. I've had the chance to go into elementary schools and talk about art, and in first grade, I'll ask the kids who loves to draw, and everyone raises their hand. And as you go up through the grades, and you ask the kids less and less, they find other interests. It might be sports or music or whatever. I was one of those kids that would have always jumped up and raised their hand and be like, yes, that's what I love to do. I love to draw. And when I was about 10 years old, a friend of mine introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay. How old were you again?
About 10.
10.
Yeah.
See, and you're a little older than me.
Yes.
Right?
Born in 73.
73, and I'm 75.
Okay.
So if you were 10, was this the old?
Yes.
Was it before Advanced?
They did have, I believe Advanced was out, but we were playing the basic,
Okay.
First with the guy prying the stone out of the eye of the statue, and
Yep. Okay.
we got introduced to it, and we started at 5 that evening and played it. It was watched the sun come up, and it was this is amazing. And as we played it more and more over the following months, I found that I would spend, much to the frustration of the other people playing, all of my time wanting to draw the characters, draw the monsters, draw the maps. So everyone was always waiting on me, where it was okay, I'm almost done drawing the creatures for our encounter tonight, and hours would go by. But my young mind, it finally occurred to me that someone was getting paid to draw monsters for the Monster Manual. And I thought, this is what I want to do. And I told my parents at 12 that I wanted to be an artist, and they were totally supportive. They said, great, and kept me with pencil and paper and supplies and lessons. And fantasy's really been at the core of what I've loved to draw my whole life. So
I didn't know that story.
Yeah.
That's great. What was your first character? Do you remember?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't remember. I remember trying to draw dragons and not being very good at drawing dragons. But I kept going with dragons, and I've gotten okay. But drew lots of trolls, lots of giants, and
we finally gave you a dragon.
Yes, which was amazing.
Minor spoilers. We won't say much, but some of the artwork.
I was very
Have you ever
excited
done
about
one
that.
for Magic the Gathering?
I don't think I've done a dragon for Magic, but I have done a few for Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
Not as many as I would have thought. I've drawn a lot more dungeons than I have dragons. I think I did about 300 illustrations for D&D, which was my first freelance client, by the way. So it was fun to have that come full circle.
Was that which
3.5.
3.5?
Yeah.
Okay, Monster Manual and stuff?
Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Handbook.
I'm going to have to dig out my old copies.
There's a lot in there. There's some not so great illustrations, and some that I'm still really proud of that I did for those sets. And then I think I did about 70 illustrations for Monty Cook's Tolis Companion, which is a pretty epic addition to D&D. But mostly 3.5 and 4. I have a couple illustrations in 5, but that's it. I kind of switched to Magic at that point.
Yeah, it's fun. We moved in here where I now live, not knowing that you were like around the corner.
Yeah, like 2 minutes away.
You're like
It's
2
amazing.
minutes away from us, your studio and everything. And that was kind of interesting. It was just kind of, I don't know, just one of those lucky things that now you're our neighbor.
That was pretty cool. Have I ever told you how I came to do art for you? Like got introduced to Isaac and that?
I know, yeah. Isaac introduced you to me.
Yeah.
I remember that. How did you, what's the story?
So it actually goes pretty far back in time. And this is
Okay.
my favorite answer to give when people say, how do I do art for Brandon? When I was 15, I was teaching art lessons.
15, huh?
15. So I had gotten to the point where I had enough kind of basic knowledge, perspective, that sort of thing, that I would teach art lessons to like 10, 11, 12-year-olds. Well, a friend, Carl Agren, when he was about 12 years old, took some art lessons from me. And he didn't go on to be an artist. He went into business. And when he graduated and got a job, he moved to the Middle East. And I believe you were on the same trip with Isaac over in the Middle East and met Carl there.
Okay,
And Carl said, hey, I have a friend who is an artist, and I think he's going to be at Salt Lake Comic-Con. And told Isaac, you should go meet Howard and meet each other. And so Isaac came back from the Middle East from my friend from Mesa, Arizona, who I had taught art lessons to when I was 15 and he was 12, met me in Salt Lake and said, I'm Isaac Stewart. I'm, creative director, art director for Brandon Sanderson. Would you be interested in doing some work for Brandon? And I said, absolutely. So
that's pretty cool.
So that's my answer. I say,
I didn't know that.
Teach art lessons to someone who's going to eventually meet Brandon's art director.
Well, I met Steve Argyle in the airport at Salt Lake City Airport.
Oh, really?
I was in there signing my books back when there was a bookstore.
Right.
And I actually ran into Kat
Cool.
there in the science fiction section. That's Steve's wife. And she said, oh, my husband has done some artwork for Magic. And I'm like, what? And then he walked over. He's like, oh, yeah, I did this and I did that. And so...
That's cool.
That's how I met Steve Argyle.
Was that a bookstore that was like at the top of the escalators?
So it was so this was way back when. So the bookstore.
Okay.
And there was one that was there that you're talking about. In the old days, though, it had this nice, prominent location right when you walk past security in the Delta terminal, just to the left. It eventually became a luggage store. It was a corner location. It was amazing.
It's a great store.
Really amazing.
That's
And
too
then
bad.
they stole that away and moved it down further, but that was okay. I could still go there. Then they made the new terminal, and there's no bookstores.
That's very sad.
Yeah. That's a growing trend.
Yeah.
Airport bookstores are an interesting thing. They used to be one of the major forces in books. In the world, were these airport bookstores. I remember reading an article when I was a kid about how cutthroat airport bookstores were for their books. They would have this prime position newsstand, the little rotating ones with paperbacks in it. And there was a story in it was the New Yorker or something, about the person who refilled them and how he would go from terminal to terminal. And in one day, if he came back and no copies had sold of one he put there in the morning, that book was out and was never back in that bookstore, because that's how cutthroat it was. This was at one of the New York airports, and nowadays you can't sell books at an airport bookstore because everybody's that's traveling a lot and used to buy all those books has Kindles, because it makes perfect sense. Like, one of the places you want a Kindle is when you're going and they're charging you for your luggage, and you have to decide between these stack of 4 books or this Kindle that has 100 on it. And you take the Kindle. Right.
It makes you wonder what that guy's doing now.
Yeah.
Like this sense of power that he wielded, and then it evaporated.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure that found his way to another job.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad though. I knew the guy who ran the bookstore in the Salt Lake one. Tony. Great, nice guy, wonderful bookseller, hand sold a lot of books. And there's no bookstore there for him anymore, so now he works at a convenience store in the airport instead. And still is a very nice guy and helpful to people and wonderful person, but they're not using his skills to the fullest because he's a bookseller and he knows how to sell books.
And I'd still rather have a bookstore. I have a Kindle, but I'd still wish there was a bookstore there. There's nothing quite like holding a book. So.
Yeah, they do this weird thing where they have bookstores. You'll walk past, if you go down the terminal, people might be thinking, Brandon, I've been to the new terminal. I can go off. I'm nerding out. I'm sorry. Bookstore nerd. I've been to the new terminal in Salt Lake, and I walk by, and it says King's English Bookshop. But it's not actually a bookshop. It's a convenience store that has one little rack of books, and it's not even the King's English, which is our local independent, one of them in Salt Lake. They've rented the name to put it up there to get people to poke in.
Wow, darn it.
Yep, so.
Well, I think I started doing artwork for Magic. You mentioned Steve Argyle about the same time that Steve did, I think. So how long ago was that you met Kat and Steve?
Boy, it must have been a decade ago.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Wow. Well, that's cool. I think it was about 8 years ago that I first met Isaac.
Yeah.
Because it was right before I moved up here. I think that was one of the last events that I did before we moved.
And you were in Mesa then?
Yeah. Yep.
Nice town, Mesa. I like
it is.
Down
it's
there.
Great. Yep. That's where I grew up. It's where I met my wife, and so love Mesa.
So I wanted to say now that we've gotten going for a little while, we will have non-spoiler discussions about the thing, other than the one little thing I mentioned. We'll try not to mention too many things like that for the first hour of this stream. The second hour of the stream will be spoiler full, which I know will be frustrating to some of you because we haven't gotten your books to you yet. You have the audiobook and the ebook, but some people are waiting for the print book, which I can fully recommend because Howard's illustrations they just feel better in print.
Yeah.
So you'll have to leave the stream, but it will be on my YouTube channel for you to come back and watch the second half once your book gets to you, hopefully in the next week or so. We've been shipping very furiously, right, team?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of late nights.
Lots of late nights.
And weekends. They're currently doing it right now.
They're currently shipping right now.
Books right now.
So. Do you know when? Do we have one more truckload to come, or
we have a truck coming tomorrow, and then we need one more truck to have enough books to ship out to everyone.
Okay, so one truck coming tomorrow, and then there's a last truck.
Yes.
And you guys take about 3 to 4 days to put out to go through a truck at this rate.
Yeah.
And then you'll all take some time off.
No,
maybe.
no.
because then the frugal
we gotta pack
the
May
Secret
box.
Project 2.
We gotta pack the May box and Secret Project 2.
Yeah. Ooh, got to be careful.
That was close.
That one spoils tonight. We can start talking about it at midnight.
That's so exciting.
So,
well, kind of. On socials, we told people we would wait until
we'll
the 11th.
wait till the 11th?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll be extra careful. Okay.
So can that come up in the second hour tonight? Or
Yes.
No, it can't.
Oh, no, it can't. It has to wait till
Even though-
midnight.
We need to keep calling it Secret Project 2 for I guess now another week, another 11 days.
Yeah.
Another 11 days. So, we've been sliding on that one internally. We used to just call it Secret Project 2 all the time, but now it's been sliding toward its actual title. We may need to reinforce in my brain that we call them by Secret Project until,
I can't wait to see it in all of its final glory, all the illustrations and everything.
It's been really fun because the books, because of the artists, the way we approached the artists, have turned out really distinctive as individual sort of art pieces. We have your book, which has these sweeping, wonderful, epic pictures matched with the little sort of sketches, what do you call them, between parts and the color that's changing colors through the whole thing. And it just lends this sort of whimsical, epic feel to the book. And we won't talk about Steve's, but it's a completely different feel. It's night and day, both incredible, but very different tones and feels to those books.
I think that from an artistic standpoint, both books embody the artist very well. You know, like knowing Steve and the art that he creates and has done, I think that his book represents his spirit really well.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. I would love to do this sort of thing more often, even if it's not with one of these Kickstarters or something, because giving the artist and saying, you have this much time, do what you want to do with the book. Here's some guidelines of what we're suggesting, and then having you do your thing has been a wonderful experience.
Well, it was wonderful for me too. I mean, really a once in a lifetime opportunity is what it felt like, to have that much, to just be able to do so much for one product is so unique. When I think of it, when I first started in the video game industry, and that's kind of where I started working as an artist.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. In fact, I kind of crossed paths with Steve and Isaac.
Okay.
In that, a lot of similar people that we
where were
worked
you
with.
working at that time?
So I started at a company called Sapphire. It was in American Fork.
Yeah.
When I was
Sapphire,
going to school.
Didn't they work a little? Wasn't their claim to fame they worked a little on Brood War, which was an expansion for?
I worked on Brood War.
Did you work for? So you worked a little on StarCraft.
I did.
Yeah.
That was one of the bigger titles that I got to work on while I was at Sapphire, and I got to work on the design of Kerrigan and work on the story with Dave Wolverton, which was really fun, be in those meetings. And that was the last project that I worked on at Sapphire before I kind of moved on.
So for those who don't know, this is the expansion for the original StarCraft game. And Dave Wolverton, our mutual friend, worked on that. He's not credited, I don't believe. Or if he is, it's just like consultant or something like that.
Yeah,
but he did a bunch of story work on
quite a
that game.
bit.
Yeah.
I mean, he was there. In fact, it was...
I remember looking it up once and being like, this, from how much Dave did on this, should say story by Dave.
It really
but I don't
should.
think it does.
Yeah, I think he was just all under that umbrella.
Yeah.
And because he wasn't an employee of Sapphire
Yeah.
and just consultant.
Right.
So, but that's where I got introduced to Dave as well, and did some work on his book Rune Lords, the Sum of All Man.
You did a fantastic painting for that.
Thank you.
One of my favorites from that whole series and things. Which, no shade against Daryl Sweet, who did the covers. There were some awesome Daryl Sweet work for that. But yours went in the inside cover of the first book, I believe.
Yes.
And it's gorgeous.
Thank you. That gave me a very distorted sense of where I was at professionally, because I did that and I thought, oh, cool. I tore books. You know, they published one of my illustrations, and I had a lot of success from it, and I chased that for quite a few years before I felt like I reached back to that level again. You know, it was like I did this for Dave, and it was a very successful illustration, and then it took me a while, I think, to get back to that point. So.
Yeah, he fought to get that thing full color and those end pages, and I'm glad he did.
Yeah.
It really, it's got this giant, and it just feels so fantastical. Open the door and seeing the people with the giant in the distance. Anyway,
that was a lot of fun. Yeah. Dave was a great supporter of artists, you know, like yourself, where that was very important to him to have his worlds fleshed out with art, and personally hired a lot of artists to do work for his books. So,
for those who don't know, Dave Wolverton was his pen name. Dave Farland was his pen name. Dave Wolverton was his real name. Was one of my mentors at BYU, and passed away a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Why don't we take a question or two from the audience? See what you guys want to know, and then. We've got it right here. I don't know if the camera can see that.
They can see most of it, and we're fixing the framing right now.
Okay. Ooh.
So.
Then so this is the original. I guess we'll talk about this because it got set up behind me while I was talking. This is the original, the first painting that I saw for any of the secret projects
Cool.
was the kind of the digital rendering of this before you physically painted it.
Yeah.
So I am the proud owner of this, purchased off of Mr. Lyon. And we have this upstairs. We're finding a home for it because we just got it a couple weeks ago.
That makes me very happy. I love that it's in your collection. It's a little bit spoilery.
Yeah, it's a little bit, but not
it's
much.
been out there. Yeah, it's been out there.
We can talk about like the title and the tone and the type of story this is.
Excellent.
At this point. We just don't want to talk about late in the book sort of things.
Sure.
So yeah, if you don't want even minor spoilers, you may not want to be here because we'll talk a little bit about the world building and things like that. But
it's exciting.
Yeah. Questions.
We did have an early question for you, Howard, based on what you were talking about. Have you seen the new Dungeons and Dragons movie?
No, and I'm very excited to see it.
Well, let me know when you want to go. I'll come with you.
Oh yes, it looks fantastic. Like just from the trailer, it looks like it really captured kind of the spirit of getting together with friends and having an adventure. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it feels like from the trailer and the reviews I've seen that it strikes that perfect tone, but between it's not completely just all goofy,
right? But
it is a comedy because if you've actually ever played D&D, you will know it tends to devolve into some humorous situations now and then would be how I would say it.
It feels like my 10-year-old self is rejoicing in finally some good D&D entertainment.
You didn't like the old movie?
So there hasn't been a movie that I've loved, but I did love in it. I don't know that it's held up really well, but the cartoon.
Oh yeah, the old
as
Saturday
a kid,
morning.
yeah, I did watch that. I was always struck on that cartoon of like why like the paladin only had a shield.
Yeah.
And it never got anything else. There was no like character building development or anything, and that always puzzled me. But
well, this is Saturday morning cartoons in the 80s.
Yeah.
The barbarian had a club and never hit people with it.
Yeah.
Used it to create cave-ins or to slam on the ground, right? You can have weapons, but they can't actually hurt people.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah, indeed.
Another question. This one's from Sayono Rayon for Howard. My 14-month-old daughter loves your art in Tress. Let's see. My 14-month-old daughter loves your art in Tress that she'll go to the bookshelf and try to say Tress, so we show her the pictures. I guess no one is too young for Tress of the Emerald Sea. So not so much of a question, but...
well, I love that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Cool.
I saw another one asking you if you used a model for Tress, and I wonder if it's in reference specifically to this picture.
I did. And she was at the Dragonsteel convention and sat for a portrait that we painted to raise some money for the Lightweaver Foundation, which was really cool. The model is a friend of my family. Her name's Sarah Snow, and was a wonderful model. So.
Yeah, for all of the ones you did, I saw the mock-ups where you do very much like you dress the person kind of like the picture you want to take, and you have them sit in the position and do the actions and do a photo shoot and then use that. And Steve does this sometimes too. I know not all artists do it this way, but it's really fun to see where you're compositing a painting out of real photography instances and stuff.
It is fun to like bring people in and find costume elements and all of that and try and get things as close as I can to it using photography or props or little 3D models, that sort of thing. And a lot of times I'll use myself or my family for that. The card Crusade that I painted for Magic.
Yep, which is now banned.
Which is now banned. You know, that originally was Honor of the Pure. When they commissioned it, it was going to be Honor of the Pure.
And then they made the dual decks where they wanted to do a reprint. And then they decided that they couldn't have a card named Crusade, which is an odd one. I mean, I know the Crusades are a sensitive topic, and there's some cards they banned for, but I mean, we use the word crusade all the time, and I think
its context is important and feels like it is expanded quite a bit.
Yeah, to get a copy of your crusade for my cube, I had to buy one on eBay because none of the big Magic resellers now will resell it because Magic the Gathering banned it, like hard banned it.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist banned it. So.
Well, Wizards kindly sent me a letter that said this wasn't your fault. Which I appreciated them sending because I've had a few people say, "Hey, why, what about your art got it banned?" And I'm like, it wasn't my art.
It's all versions.
Yeah, all versions of Crusade. But on that one, there's like 20 people in it, and I modeled for all of them except for Elspeth.
Really?
Yeah. So there's some fun digital comps where I'm like the old guy and the young guy, and all making angry faces and.
Isaac's in one of your paintings, I believe.
Yeah, Isaac and Jacob are in the back.
Yeah, they're in the back, though they have beards on in the painting and not in the actual picture, so it's a little hard to tell.
I got a little carried away painting them, and they're quite detailed in the background, more than they probably should be. As you go into the background, you often let the detail fade a little bit because detail draws the eye.
Yep.
So it got picked up pretty quick on Reddit of like, who are these two people in the background here?
Yeah.
People were inventing little stories.
Cathartic Reunion.
Yeah, Cathartic Reunion.
Which is an awesome piece. Is Harmless Offering your most signed and famous one now, would you say? Or is it one of your Planeswalkers? Or
Harmless Offering is definitely the art that I think that is my legacy in Magic. That I've had people bring me their pet cats to events to hold, and I'm quite allergic to cats, and so I'm like, well, maybe just at arm's length, hold your cat. But I think I might have signed more Death Shadow.
Okay,
than
just
Harmless
because
Offering now.
of how popular a card it is.
A play set. Everyone
Everyone
that
wants
uses
four
it
of them.
wants four of them. So I've signed a lot of those, but Harmless Offering. That definitely goes on my banner at Magic events because it brings people in.
If you're not familiar with Magic, this is taking place in kind of a Lovecraftian-inspired setting for that set. And so it's a person giving another person a cute kitten, and then the kitten's tail has turned into some sort of serpent mouth Cthulhuid tentacle thing. And you don't even notice it at first, and then you see the tail.
You see the tail, and then you notice other little clues, like his thumb is bandaged, and then there's a bite mark on his other hand, and a little bit of blood on the kitten's mouth, and tiny little clues that maybe this isn't a gift that you want.
Yes. Any other questions we got there, Adam?
Yeah, we got a bunch.
Okay.
This one is from Matthew McWaters from the chat, and I've seen this from several others kind of related to it. How much of the story were you given in order to come up with the art? And maybe if there's specific scenes or something, or anything specific you want to talk about that creative process.
The whole story. It was really cool. Isaac called me and said, Brandon would like to sit down with you. And it was like, oh, cool. And part of me was like, oh, what have I done? Hopefully I'm not in trouble. But came over, and that's when you revealed what you revealed on the video.
Yep, you got early participation in that.
And I think it was about like 5 or 6 months before the reveal, or maybe not.
Maybe more like 4.
4
I think.
months.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because it was like get to work.
Yeah. It was like we want to do this. We might. Our timeline might be a little aggressive, but we're really excited. So yeah.
It was great. So I got the whole story, and then I had to wrap up some existing contracts, things that I had going, and then I was able to roll right into it. And it was about 5 months of working on it, pretty much every waking moment to get things done for it, which was a fantastic opportunity. I learned new things like the cover. Doing the art for the cover presented some real technical challenges, and creating art in a way that I don't normally make art, just from like understanding the printing process and how that was going to work.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I hadn't thought about it. But it makes perfect sense.
Very different. Learned some new tricks in Photoshop, and in ways to handle the files. Isaac helped me learn some of those things, but picking out the different materials that were going to go on the cover, and then finding out like how fine the resolution could be and the stamping process, and going back and forth. So it was cool.
Yeah, if there's art in that book, you did it.
Yeah.
From the end pages to the cover to the wingdings,
Yeah.
all of that's Howard Lyon.
Yeah, even the font, which when Isaac presented that was like, I love fonts. I don't consider myself a graphic designer. That is a specialized skill, but I love a good font, and so to be able to even go through and be like that was very cool. So I don't think artists get that kind of opportunity these days. Like, that's very cool, in that you've presented that for several artists. It's neat.
I thought about it because I remember when what's his name, an artist was given kind of the Game of Thrones calendar, and they're like, you get to do all the illustrations.
Yeah.
You know, you take a few years, and the calendar is yours. However, whatever you want to illustrate, and how exciting that was for that illustrator to be able to be like, I've got the calendar coming up that I got to pick all the scenes and do the artwork for, and I thought that was that stuck in my head when I heard about that.
So cool. Was that Donato? Do you remember? Was that
it
his?
wasn't Donato. The Donato eventually, I think, did one.
Yeah.
They just did that cycling through. I'm trying to remember what his name was. I want to say his name started with a P. So someone I ended up being guest of honor several times with at conventions, and so I got to know him. And then I haven't seen him in 6-7 years because of COVID and various things. And so if you say the name, it'll pop in my head. But yeah,
Cool. That's a rich world.
So before we do another question, I think we should do a giveaway.
Okay, giveaway time.
Yeah, we're going to give away 5 of these fun little pewter doom slugs that
Pewter doom slugs. So
that are
let's
right in
talk
front of you.
about
And
pewter doom slugs.
And Brendan, I don't know if this has been someone has talked to you about this, but I was hoping you'd sign the bottom.
Yeah, I
of
can sign the
these.
bottom of the doom slugs. So these they've been all over our social media.
Yeah.
Joy's husband, one of our employees.
Katie's.
Katie's husband. Katie's husband. That's right. Katie's husband made these and cast them using our actual. You want to throw me that doom slug? Because they're pewter. Though I don't know that we recommend you do this at home. I'm not sure how dangerous it is.
They are safe up to 450 degrees, which
Okay.
is the melting temperature of these. So
Okay.
And I don't think the metal's toxic.
So there you go. So if you're experienced with casting pewter, you can do it yourself. But we used our actual molds. We say we. I had no idea this was going on. They and made these cool little doom slugs out of it. So we're gonna give away some of these.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I got to pick one for my shelf. You'll see it on the shelf in future streams. But yeah.
So all you need to do is head over to YouTube if you're not there right now. Sorry, everybody else. That's just where our Nightbot service works. All you need to do is type Taynix into the chat. Be sure to only do it once, and that's Taynix, and that will enter you to win, and we will draw a winner in just a few minutes.
Taynix.
Oh, we're going to draw 5 names.
Draw
in a
5
few
names
minutes.
and give them away.
Yep.
And yeah. Don't enter twice because the Nightbot automatically disqualifies you if you do it twice. So just type it in, and then it will randomly select 5 people. And then why don't you get me a Sharpie and those things, and I'll sign them on stream here.
They have a satisfying heft to them
They
as
do.
well. They're very cool. Ooh, look at that box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember back in the day, I want to say, maybe I'm repeating apocryphal information.
That first one's mine,
This one's
but
yours?
I still want it signed.
Okay. So that one's, that works just fine. That one's Adam's. They used to make gaming figures out of lead, didn't
Yeah.
they? Like straight up lead?
They did.
Because I remember when we went to buy new gaming figures for our campaign, and they were all suddenly twice as expensive. And we're like, what's going on here? Why are they suddenly so much more expensive? Like, well, turns out lead's not good for you. And so they've started doing them in pewter, which is more expensive.
Yeah.
And the funny story about this is I was, as a little kid, I'm like 15 or whatever when they changed this, so I guess not a little kid, but a kid, complaining about the price. And the person there, I swear, the person there said to me, well, it's because there's silver in pewter, and that's why it's so expensive. They have to put silver in it now. There's not silver in pewter. No. Silver is tin and lead.
Or pewter, yeah.
Yeah. Pewter is, but it got in my head that pewter has silver in it. So when I wrote Mistborn, I wrote alloys of different metals, and I wrote silver as being, pewter being an alloy of silver.
Wow.
All through the first draft. I was like halfway through the second book doing that when Peter came to me and said, there's not really silver in pewter. Pewter's one of these metals, apparently you can mix some different things into it to make it, and it counts as pewter. So sometimes there's like a little bit, but it's not like, this is not really, pewter doesn't have a lot of silver in it. It needs to be tin or lead. And I'm like, well, I can't have him eating lead. That's just going to become a meme. So I had to change silver to tin, but then my fingers kept typing silver even up through, like, once in a while they'll sneak into the Wax and Wayne era books where I call someone a silver eye instead of a tin eye. So,
and also note that these do not have any lead.
Yes. These do not have any lead. Okay.
No lead.
Yeah. So what are they? Just tin and
it's
what?
lead-free pewter, tin, and antimony.
Okay, there you go.
Antimony,
That's what I was
however
saying.
you
Cool.
say that.
Yeah. All right. So pewter can be made with different sorts of things, as I remember looking up. So no lead, lead-free.
Yeah, we don't want to give that away.
How did we get the gold? Is this
So that is unpolished, which is the one that I like because it has a little bit of a yellowish finish on it, and the rest are polished.
Okay.
Is the yellow coming from the mold?
I have no idea.
Interesting. Well, I discovered that some of my early D&D figures were lead when I went to Kit Bash one together, and thought I'd just solder it just a little bit, and the whole thing puddled. It just kind of melted as soon as a little bit of heat got it to it. They were very delicate.
Yeah, I wonder if I have any of my old ones that I should make sure, nobody is licking or things
that's
like
right.
that. Other questions, or are we going
to... Yes, I think right now they're pulling contest winners or the giveaway winners. Yep, so no need to enter anymore.
Okay.
I think. Got 2 winners.
All right. And
nice.
What do they do if they win?
So all they have to do is email contest@brandonsanderson.com. And I'm putting that in the chat right now. We will verify who you are. So you can't just email us. The first winner is... Magician 101.
Good name.
Yep. I assume we'll post these in the chat as well. So
yeah, they're already posted in the chat. Jackson Mondragon is the second.
Jackson Mondragon.
Good name also. It's a good Wheel of Time reference there.
Daniel Brown is the third.
Daniel Brown. Yeah, and it does announce it automatically in the chat as well, but, just for posterity.
Nice.
Another one. And I'm not seeing that one coming through yet.
Brennan, have your streams become the time that you sign, or do you sign also outside of?
So I mostly sign these days on my podcast with Dan, which we started for my YouTube channel so that I could sign. The podcast is a nice side effect of the fact that I have to sign so many of these things. And streams started because I needed to sign, but then streaming every week was too much, both for me and for the fans. I'm sure there's some of you who would like to show up every week, but we wanted something that was streams a little more involved. Because you're answering the questions and things like that. And Intentionally Blank is just a little more relaxed. Dan and I just chat about whatever stupid thing is on our minds. Cool. That's our podcast. And so it's been good. We try to do Intentionally Blank 3 weeks and then podcast 1. But
cool.
I've been out of town, and we had the delay to the books being shipped, and we kept saying, we got to get Howard on for the next one, but then I was in Hawaii, and so we ended up not having a stream in February, and our March stream is the last day of March. So, yeah.
The rest of the winners, I'm just going to go through all of them again, but it's Stubbs, Daniel Brown, Magician 101, Zombie, and Zebra 3. So be sure to email contest.
Yeah, Zombie Zebra 3.
Oh, Zombie Zebra 3. You only sent me 4 then.
Jackson Mondragon.
Oh, and
Yeah.
text.
I was going to say
And
there
Jackson,
was one that didn't.
So Zombie Zebra 3 and then Jackson Mondragon. Excuse me.
There you go. So, email contest@brandonsanderson.com, and we will get you a quite weighty little doom slug made of lead-free pewter. And we have 5 more of these, so we're going to give
We're going to
those
do that
away.
in the second hour.
Yep, second hour, we will have 5 more of them to give away if that's what you would like. And we will probably eventually have some of these up for sale, the not the pewter figures, but the so that one's mine.
Oh, this one's yours.
Yes. And these are the 5 to send away. We will have some of the Cytoverse boxes up for sale eventually, maybe.
Yeah, we're finishing Tress, and we didn't want to mix things
Yeah.
up by putting them up yet, so we've been waiting until we calm down from Tress, and then we'll probably right after we finish Tress, we'll put up
the extra boxes. We just overprint on purpose in case there's something wrong with a print run or we get returns and things like that. Once we know the print run is good, we can open up some of them for sale. We'll still keep some back for returns, but yeah.
Yeah, we still have some Hoyd boxes. The
Yeah.
Tress box is gone, but we do have hardcovers.
Not available yet, but we
For
have pre-orders
yes.
because those won't go out until everyone's gotten theirs. So
I'm excited for the Tress box.
yeah.
Eventually, I'm happy to be patient.
Yeah, you haven't gotten yours yet.
Nope. Which is
they
totally
give you a
irony.
copy, right?
They did.
They
yes,
give you a copy,
yes.
but you haven't gotten your box.
That's right.
I haven't gotten my box yet either, though they
Yeah.
came and snuck me a box,
Oh,
which I
okay.
gave to my mother. But I
Nice.
get one shipped in the mail to me,
Nice.
so I'm waiting for that one.
I did get a Spanish version of Tress, which
Oh,
was
yeah.
really cool. Alex brought one home for
Yeah.
me. And my mom is learning Spanish. My 82-year-old mom is learning Spanish, and so I took that down to Arizona for her so she can use that to help her learn Spanish. So that was very cool.
What else we got?
Several people in the chat have set beard goals, so that should
Oh,
make you
alright.
feel better. And I feel better because I also say that to you every time I see you.
Yeah, it is quite a handsome beard.
Well, thank you very much. I did just trim it for the stream, so cut a fair bit off, but
I've started warning people that I'm going to pick an age. It might be like 65.
yeah,
Where at which point I will go full wizard.
excellent.
Right? Like I feel like it's at some point looming. Distantly right now, but at some point I will go full wizard. That means grow the hair out and grow out the beard and go full on Radagast or whatever.
That's going to be a glorious day.
Including with all the birds? Or
Well, not film Radagast, who I think did Radagast a little dirty, quite literally.
Yes.
But
Yes.
Little
I think
guano.
I look more like a Radagast than I do a Gandalf, so I usually use Radagast. But I could be a Dumbledore. I could pull off Dumbledore.
Very cool.
So yeah.
I haven't thought about which literary wizard I would want to be, and I have to give that some thought.
Yes,
now.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, you are wearing a suit, so you're automatically feel more Saruman to me.
All right.
In the suit.
well, I mean, there's always Dresden as well.
Yeah, there is Harry. But anyway.
Nice.
Many people have just joined us, and they would like to know who you are.
My name is Howard Lyon, and I am an artist and have done some work for Brandon's Cosmere and Universe, and yeah.
And did the painting right next to us.
Yeah.
All of the artwork for Tress of the Emerald Sea.
Yes.
Done by Howard Lyon here. And various magic cards.
And if
Magic cards, video games. Sorry.
and if you want to see some amazing art, you can go to our description and find his Instagram there. He has an awesome Instagram, so go check it out.
And you can buy artist proofs of his magic cards on his website, signed,
Yeah.
which I did recently. I have to sometimes be sneaky about this because my artist friends will just give them to me. So I have to sneak on and buy them. And then Howard's Child works for us, and so they can bring me the cards.
Send the cards over. That's great. Yeah, it's pretty cool when you see an order come in. Actually, my mother-in-law, who helps me with shipping and fulfillment and that, texted me like you ordered like maybe 2 a.m.
Yeah, that's when I do stuff. Yeah.
I had a text waiting for me. Did you see the order that came in? So that was pretty cool. That's fun to see.
Those are proudly in my cube now.
I love it.
That planes you did from Eldraine is so pretty.
Oh, thank you.
And so
Eldraine is I don't know how much we want to talk about Magic, but Eldraine is my second favorite set that I got to do work for with Magic. Lorwyn being my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are both really great matches to kind of your style and things like that. Like I immediately thought of you for Tress because there's just this whimsical fairy tale feel to the book. And I thought, well, I've seen, like your Trapped in the Castle painting for Eldraine is so good. And it's just kind of, you do all kinds of things that are great. But that seems to be a match to the style that you like to do.
That's definitely where my heart is with art, is kind of that classical fairy tale and, really that core fantasy aesthetic really speaks to me.
All right. Throw us some more, Adam.
This next question is from Lucy Dunn, and it's a bit of a mouthful, so bear with me. What is the process in designing art for books? How does the author work with an artist to help create accurate depictions of things never seen before? And how common is it for there to be mistakes in the art? Follow up. An example that comes to mind is that the Bridge 4 patch is illustrated on the left shoulder for the cover of Words of Radiance, but it's written that it's worn on the right shoulder, or that Vedaletives, I don't know how to say this, golden keys are drawn as silver for the Oathbringer end papers.
Yes, that's a good one that is pointed out on Vev's silver keys in the paintings, but by Vev's golden keys, so the process, it's fairly standard how it works. Usually with a publisher or an author, they have an art director. It's unusual for me to work directly with an author. Sometimes it happens, but usually that's an independent author because it's the publisher that is often controlling. Which in Brandon's case, in your case with Dragonsteel, you're very closely tied to the publishing effort, and but I interface through Isaac Stewart. Like on Tress, with the exception of the very first meeting, I don't think that we ever talked about the art.
Yeah, what would happen is you would go meet with Isaac, and then I have a weekly art review with Isaac.
Right.
And he will bring it up and say, what do you think about this? Here's what Howard and I chatted about. Here's things I'm thinking. And we'll talk it over, and I'll give my thoughts, and then it goes back to you. And this might feel like telephone game, but the thing is, a good art director, which Isaac is a great art director, can interpret author speak into artist speak really well.
Yeah.
And the whole industry has found that if you've got that filter between editor and author and artist, it helps things turn out the way that everyone wants them to.
Yes, and Isaac is very good, and I've worked with a lot of art directors, and Isaac is right there at the top of the list. And the advantage is you don't have time for me to ask you all the questions that I have.
Yeah.
So I'm able to, petition Isaac multiple times a day and say, well, what about this? And how about this? And then Isaac can get back to me and give me a summary, give you a summary, and then in return give me a summary.
I'm trying to remember. On this one, I feel like you did the thing that is kind of standard, which is you'll give us like 4 thumbnails, like little sketches of, here's a piece I'm thinking of doing. Here are 3 shots, like one will be zoomed way out, one will be zoomed in, different angle, the moon will be in a different place. Sometimes you'll get like 6 or 8. If it's Steve Argyle, he'll just kind of keep going until you tell him stop, we have too many. And then you look at all of these, and then you kind of have to decide which of these do you do? And Isaac always says he'll let me look at them, he'll have me decide, and then he'll point out which ones are the artist's favorite.
Okay.
And usually it overlaps in some way. Like the artist's favorite is either my favorite or the second. It's like, what is the artist most excited about painting?
Yeah.
And as long as, we kind of talk, sometimes I'll latch onto one and be like, I love this piece. Let's do it that way. But most of the time it's like, what is the artist most excited by? What mixed with what works the best ends up being the one that we point to.
Which in the case of like Tress and Secret Project 2, I know with Steve, there were so many pieces that we wanted to do for it that I think your initial request was for 4 illustrations, and we ended up with 10, and then the cover and the end pages, and then the chapter headers and some spot illustrations in there as well.
We did give him some extra money.
We wanted to
don't worry, he did extra work. So
you took great care of me. It was perfect. But there were just too many things that needed to be illustrated in there, and even with that, we didn't get to do everyone.
At the end of the day, I remember you were like traveling. You were like going to Italy, which is where you love to go. And Isaac's like, he's got to turn this in today because he's leaving for Italy, or you maybe are like in Italy doing some finishing touches on something or something like that. And so I feel bad for cutting into your Italy time, but we did get it done and in.
I will say that the last illustration in the book, the last spot illustration in the book was done on a bus going from Italy to Germany. So to the finishing touches on it. So yeah, it was, but that's great. I wish I could have had even more time on it.
Yeah, if I ever do something like this again, I might have to give people more time. This is what we're learning, even with these shipping delays. Like, we were promised by the promise is a strong word. They were very sure they could get them to us until they couldn't, right? Because things just run into it, and it's my aggressive deadlines on it because of the wanting to do the year of Sanderson. This is really the problem. So even though the publisher told us the printer told us they could do it, it's not 100% their fault. In fact, it's more my fault than it is theirs, because there's always things that come up. And we all knew that this year was going to be a hard year for shipping and things like that. So it's really the fact that I did this all in secret and then came up with the idea. Like I talked to you only a few weeks after I had the idea and went to my team and said, let's do this.
Yeah, wow.
But
we did. You just the schedule that you proposed, they were wrapped up, pretty far ahead of time of when the planning to ship them. So
we did. It felt like all deadlines we could meet, and on our side we managed to do it. It's just that, like with Tress, I don't know if you heard, to get the foiling to work, you have to run a cover multiple times to the press, and they strike the foiling in different ways to get it to stick. And they had thought it would take 4 strikes. Right. The cover, when they actually did it, took 11 strikes. So suddenly you're running it through basically, triple what you had anticipated. So the printing takes 3 times as long. And so they had set aside time for doing this, and there was not any empty time in that schedule, and they did what they could, and then they had another project that they had already delayed. They did that one, and then they came back to us, and that's what really took the delay. As I understand, did I get that all right? Yeah.
We think they paused to work on other projects.
Which we can't 100% blame them on, right? If we're delaying everyone else's projects because our takes so long, but yeah. And then another factor of this is we went to the printers and we said, we need 25,000 copies of these before the Kickstarter. That's what we anticipated would be the top end. And then we sold 100,000 copies 4 times, and that 25 was including extras, right? So we thought we'd sell like 15 and get 10,000 extra, so that we ended up needing 150,000, and that's when our wonderful print rep went to all the printers, and they're like, well, we'll do our best. And so we did get 25,000 in January. What they had initially promised us, they delivered to us. And so It's partially that we were really successful, partially that the printing, the covers just took longer. Again, I don't blame the printer at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Things happen.
Things happen.
Yeah.
But we've hopefully got the process for Secret Project 2 working much better. But we thought when we got that first ship in January, we all heaved a sigh of relief. We're like, all right, this is going to happen. Here we go. And then a month before we heard anything back on the next one. So we'll see. We'll see. We really hope that we have our problems fixed for Secret Project 2. But Secret Project 3, we're doing it at a different printer, and it always planned to do it at a different printer. And we kind of went to them and said, this has been an issue. And so they, as I understand, have already started on Secret Project 3.
Yep.
So
excellent.
We already have the test cover for it.
yeah, we already have the test cover and everything. So our real hope is that at least by 3, there's not going to be any delays. But who knows?
Well, I feel a little responsible for the cover because as we worked with the printer, I kept trying to up the complexity of it. Like, could we do one more foil? Like, could we do a little bit more and pushing it? So,
well, I think the majority of people would be happier having a 2-month delay and a prettier cover. So I don't think you have to feel too bad about that.
The difference on the cover between having a 3 foil plus the debossing to get the darker and a 2 foil is a pretty significant difference in what you can do with the design. And so I kept asking if that was possible to do. Can we add the one more? And so I was really thrilled when that happened because I think I think people ultimately, when they finally hold it and look through it, if they receive it 2 months after when they thought it was, that's all going to go away, I think.
Any other questions before we move to spoiler?
There was one, the second part of that question that we didn't answer, like Vev's golden keys, like how that happened. Like, how does that happen? How do little things like that creep in? One, it speaks to the complexity of the world. But Vev's metal, Vev's color is silver. And I read that and thought, oh, so she's going to have silver keys, without having that kind of encyclopedic knowledge of every line in Stormlight Archive in my head. But then I was listening to the audio of it later, and they said by Vev's Golden Keys, and I thought, oh shoot, I made the keys the wrong color.
Your piece is we consider an in-world painting. That this is a painting that hangs somewhere on Roshar. So we don't mind continuity errors. In fact, they add to the verisimilitude of the piece. Like, this is an illustrator, your doppelganger in the Stormlight Archive painted this at some point. And this is what your doppelganger decided to paint. And maybe your doppelganger, in where you're from, they say silver keys instead of golden keys. Right. Maybe you just thought, it looks better. They shouldn't be gold anyway.
Right.
Maybe,
Maybe they said pewter keys, and they thought pewter was made with silver.
There you go.
And so it.
So in our world, particularly these in-world paintings, I prefer them to have little artifacts like that. The cool. Painter's personality should be part of the piece. For those who don't know, these are the herald paintings that become the end pages of the Stormlight Archive books, which I've always kind of described as the Sistine Chapel paintings of the Stormlight world. That, if you go to the Sistine Chapel, all the prophets are painted up there right underneath the famous painting on the ceiling that everybody knows. And I imagine these kind of heralds are that version. Here are the 10 demigod angelic figures of the Stormlight world.
That makes me want to see him at like 18 feet tall.
The
Sibyls and prophets in there. Yeah, that's really cool. So I do love when you described that those paintings were in-world paintings, because it does give a little bit, you can give a little bit different feel to an illustration like that than something where you're trying to have a very literal depiction of the text.
Donato's tall, and of him just kind of emerging from darkness and fire. It's such an evocative kind of idea for Talm.
Such a great painting.
And it works best as an in-world interpretation of this character. So, all right, we are going to move to spoiler portion.
All right.
Spoiler portion.
And the instruction I gave everyone is that this is spoilers for Tress only.
Only. No spoilers for any other secret projects or other
please.
Cosmere things. So if you are watching and you have not finished the Stormlight Archive, we will not be spoiling the Stormlight Archive, but we will talk about the ending of Tress if there are questions referencing it.
There are
Things
some
saying. Yeah.
Cosmere connection questions. Do you want me to leave those out?
It depends on if they spoil the other book.
Okay.
The existence of things like dragons is not a spoiler, even though they're from Yolen and we haven't seen a lot of them.
There's a lot of Elantris related ones.
A lot of Elantris related ones. As long as it doesn't spoil, I don't know. Elantris we may want to stay away from because it is relevant to the ending of Elantris and things like that. So we may want to steer shy of those for now. Save those for full Cosmere spoiler in June or July.
Yeah,
whenever we do
if
that.
there's any questionable ones, we'll just ask and you'll say nope if that works for you, unless you think it's going to
the problem
spoil
is
the
the
question.
The question is
Okay.
The questions
Okay, never
themselves
mind.
are spoilers.
Yeah. And we also ask politely to please keep those similar types of comments out of the chat for people who haven't read the books either.
Yep.
So you should be safe for Tress, but again, yeah.
Yep. All right. So you can hit us with a non-spoiler while we're waiting for those. if
This
you want.
is,
Okay.
oh yeah,
Good.
they're all ready now. Who is your favorite Doug? I'm guessing it's Doug.
Who is my favorite Doug? It depends. The warehouse has adopted the name Doug for the warehouse employees, in which case I can't pick a favorite because that would be bad. But if you're talking about book Dougs, well, it's obviously Doug.
Yeah.
What about you, Howard?
I had the connections through my network to get to model for quite a few of the Dougs
Did
in
you?
the background. Yeah. So that was a case where I needed some bodies to pose for Dougs. All right.
Just in case you need it.
And yeah, I'd feel better with a copy of Tress right there. So yeah, in the image where Tress is steering the ship, where she's taking the helm, those figures in the far background are all me.
All you.
Yep, all the Dougs.
So you get to have a favorite warehouse Doug. Where I
do
can't.
get to have a favorite warehouse Doug because my youngest child, Alex, works as a Doug. Mm-hmm. That's very cool.
This next one from someone's name I can't pronounce says, for Howard, how would you rate Hoyd's fashion sense in Tress? Is there anything you'd add to or change about his ensemble?
The fashion sense, it's a cursed fashion sense for sure. Can I tie this? I'll tie this into the earlier question of mistakes, things that slip through because something slipped through and I've been called to task on it on Reddit. So maybe I'll address that. I demulleted Hoyd and didn't realize it. Was so focused on getting the right look for Hoyd, had the shirt and shorts and sandals and socks and everything else, and then was deficient when it came to Hoyd's hair. So maybe there needs to be like a mullet edition of that artwork where
you remullet him.
Yeah, that's right, and bring that back in. Something to add. That's a tough call. It's already pretty definitive with Hoyd with the shirt. I will say, look at the pattern on Hoyd's shirt in there. That's kind of fun. So I'll let that be a halfway spoiler. So you have to go and look at it to see what that is. But that's pretty fun.
The next one is from Seth Cran. Howard, which of the work you did for Tress is your favorite? Are there any details you wanted to include but couldn't?
I really, man, they were so fun to do. I did love this one that's here, the oil painting, because it was like the first realization of Tress as a character for me. It's something that as soon as I read that passage in the book of it talked about Tress sitting on the porch and sipping the lukewarm tea. I was like, well, that's it right there. That's going to represent it. That evolved into the cover of Tress, kind of symbolically on this very small rock, wanting it to feel almost a little claustrophobic, where she's perched on that rock and reaching out for something more, that sense of longing, which is a theme in a lot of my art outside of Tress, is that desire for something more and longing for that. So it's hard for me to pick between the cover and the illustration that's behind Brandon right now, because I felt like it was that scene of her sipping the tea that really struck me, and then coming up with the image for the cover. I also did the sketch. A lot of people have liked the sketch that was the very first little sketch for the secret projects that was on there. But it evolved into this, which to me, I think captures that symbolism with Tress a little bit better than the other one.
Yeah,
I think it reads better.
I feel
for
like
me.
the cover's the thing we went over the most versions of.
Yeah.
Comparatively to all the others.
Yeah, I think there were 12 to 15 little sketches for the cover that we worked through, and changing scales and, coming up with the design for it. So
covers are tricky because you have to get the lettering on the cover. And sometimes you get these gorgeous pieces that there's no place for lettering,
right,
or it's going to be so busy that you can't make out the lettering. So
yeah. So
there was a follow-up question about how much creative license you were given, and if Brandon asked for anything specific.
Brandon, I don't remember you asking for anything specific. This was probably the most creative license I've ever had on just about any project. I mean, it really was like, okay, we've worked together a little bit. I want you to read this and come up with what you want to do for it. And then it was a process of submitting those ideas and making sure that they really worked. But it was pretty open. It was a pretty open book at that point, which was very cool.
Pun intended, I assume.
Yes.
Yes. I want to say, speaking of favorite pieces, my favorite of the sketches is the hawk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's of the non-full color ones. Is the cutest rat? No, the
inside,
the interior one of Hawk. Wherever that ended up, that's my favorite of those.
Which was a last minute request where it was like, we need.
For some reason, he looks so cute in that little sketch. So
I tried in that one. I tried to give it just a little sense of like, would a rat stand like that? Like go up on its back legs, its hind legs like that. Just a little sense there. So,
is there So some of these illustrations we have are the what do we call them? They're not full color, but they imitate being full color. Was there a different process that you used for creating those? Like
that was a technical challenge that I had never worked with. So inside the book, we had the opportunity to have black and white and one Pantone color. Yeah. Inside, and it meant that. So like with light, when you combine light, it gets brighter, but with inks, it multiplies. And so I needed to account for where the Pantone color was going to be. Wherever there was a dot of Pantone color, I needed to reduce the darkness of the black ink so that it wouldn't just become overly dark. If you had like 50% green ink and 50% black ink, it's going to look very black. And so you have to account for that. And so there was some back and forth on that process of learning how to account for adding a Pantone ink into the black and white printing.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I'm thinking of the one of Charlie and Tress. It seems so light and so bright.
Right.
With you saying that you, so you accomplished it.
Well, good.
Good.
I think one of the things that I loved about that sort of printing is it really was evoked early 20th century books of like Treasure Island and Robin Hood and Ivanhoe, and I even chose the Futura font to go on the bottom of there because I remember seeing that font on the cover of a lot of these old books that had like N.C. Wyeth illustrations in it, and Dean Cornwell, and these illustrators that I admired so much. But if you look back at some of those old books, they would do that. They'd have just the one color in there in addition to the black and white. And so like on this one, you know, I'd go through and create masks where just the green color would go. And so we would get tricky in areas like the sky where you want it to still feel light and illuminated. I'd have to go in and make masks to adjust those, the black layer up. So yeah, it was a cool challenge.
We thought that process, this is something Isaac's been wanting to do forever since we started playing with it in our leather bounds, is to have access to that one shade of color for some of the illustrations. Just feel like it adds a different feel to some of the illustrations in the book.
It really does. There's like a classic feel to it. And then when we asked, so we had these chapter headers that were animating. You know, with each
chapter headers, as so they grow each chapter a little bit.
Which was fun, but then we thought, oh, they're kind of representing the Emerald Sea. What happens when we cross over? And so we asked the printer, the good printer, can we switch to another color?
And this was all your idea.
Deal. And they said yes. And fortunately, since the last sea is black that we encounter, it still worked because we still have access to the black ink. And it was almost like serendipity because a couple of the illustrations at the end, like where we have Tress in the boat, she's wearing a red coat. So we still had access to our red ink, and so that worked out there to have the black with the red ink, and you can just kind of see the little creature in there, kind of hidden away. So it all came together and worked out better than I could have hoped.
From Love That Dog, they say, most of your books have an Ars Arcanum at the end, but Tress didn't. Was this a deliberate choice to leave the magic/aethers more open-ended for the future, or to fit with the fairy tale style?
Yes. So I kind of want Tress to be a little bit of an in-world artifact. This is Hoyd telling this story. And it's supposed to feel like the story that he told to some people that got recorded and written down and, published for you. And Chris, who writes the Ars Arcanums, is not involved in that. And it didn't feel appropriate for any of the secret projects to do that. So we replaced that with kind of my author's discussion of where the book came from and things like that. So you can kind of imagine the book, in most of the books, the Ars Arcanum is an in-world artifact stapled to the end of the novel, which is not. This is reversed. The novel's an in-world artifact, and you have stapled to the end something that's not in-world, which is my kind of thoughts about it. So, yeah. It's a good question. Thoughtful question.
I know with art, in that this happened with Tress, where we originally started thinking 4 illustrations, and then it grew and grew. And I know that like the books that you've wanted to write have done that too. Like Mistborn is turned into more books. What about Tress?
So my goal with these secret projects was to be like, this is a self-contained thing. I've gotten myself into trouble in the past by writing a book like Warbreaker and then promising a sequel. And so my goal with these was to write them each so they didn't demand sequels. I had various levels of success, I'll say, on that with them. But while you'll probably catch references to this, I have no plans to do a sequel. I like this one. It's self-contained as it is. And the same for Secret Project 3. 2 is not Cosmere, but Dan and I have already brainstormed sequels. I don't know that we'll ever do them, but It grew out of the podcast a little bit. That book did in the whole setting. And then 4, Secret Project 4 is more deeply tied into the Cosmere in very specific ways. So it's most likely, whether there'll be a sequel or not is a question, but the characters involved are deeply involved in the rest of the Cosmere. And so you will absolutely see them again because, yeah.
Well, I have to think it's difficult when you've laid a foundation like you have in Tress with, the magic and the mechanisms that, are at play, to not want to expand on that, not want to build on that a little bit more. But
at the same time, I got to finish
so many
the
others.
Cosmere
That's right.
before I die. So I can't keep adding too many books.
That's right.
This is a release valve. Writing a book like this is I need to write something different to take a break. And if that then becomes
turns into its own
thing, then that just adds to the pressure to finish. And so I like these secret projects being standalones.
Yeah. No, that's smart.
I was mostly successful with that.
Cool.
And I do think, as a fan, once in a while, what I want to read is a standalone. When you finish it, you always want more. But I already have so many massive series. I think the fans will appreciate in the long run just having some books you can just give to your friend and be like, just read this one. It's the only one, right? Because I will eventually do sequels to Elantris and Warbreaker, which will take the 2 main standalone Cosmere novels and expand on them. So basically, books 1 and 3 of the Secret Projects are kind of there to replace as here are standalones you can give to someone. If they just want a book that is not committing to a series of any sort.
That's cool. Well, I know with a painting that a powerful way to involve the viewer is to not paint every detail and let their mind be what makes up a lot of the information and a lot of the detail. And there is some value in a story like this. Like, I imagine the other moons and the other spores and that's powerful to have that open door, that blank page to continue to wonder what the rest of the world might be like. And if you went and answered all of those questions, that would also be very cool. But at the same time, it keeps my mind engaged with that world. So I get it. Darn it.
Lacrosse Demon says, you've mentioned that Tress of the Emerald Sea and the Lost Metal are you writing gloves off in regards to including connections to other Cosmere works. If you had the same freedom for that with the earlier books, would you have changed anything?
Mostly, I would probably have had the original Mistborn trilogy do a little bit more with Hoyd and some of the crossovers that are happening behind the scenes there. But at the same time, I am happy with this progression, right? Like, I am happy that the old Cosmere books, or the original Cosmere books, don't do a lot of this because we have a chance to build slowly. The gloves coming off was less me saying, man, I wish I'd been like this all along, and me belatedly realizing I don't need to have those gloves anymore because of where we are. Yeah. It was more me kind of with the Secret Projects and Lost Metal being a little embarrassed of the Cosmere connections, like Lost Metal in particular. I'm like, is this too much? Is this self-indulgent? And then me realizing, no, this is where we are in the story. This is my natural storytelling instincts say this is where we should be. The crossovers between the worlds, I feel, would legitimately be happening more and more. And particularly as you're getting to know some of the different societies and groups and things like that, it's just going to be a real natural outgrowth. And so it's more me saying, I am not going to be, I had started to feel embarrassed about those, that in a way it's like, I don't want to be self-indulgent, but I decided I'm not being self-indulgent. This is what the narrative legitimately demands. So,
it's very satisfying. As a fan of the Cosmere and reading the books, I found it incredibly satisfying to see that starting to happen.
Well, and with Lost Metal in particular, not giving spoilers for Lost Metal, I brought in a whole thing that we haven't written a book on yet. And so it's not like it's like one of the big worries is I don't want people to ever pick up one of my books, even still, and feel like they have to have read the whole Cosmere to understand it. And with the gloves off, I still maintain that. I still maintain that if you're going to read the Wax and Wane series, you should be able to read and enjoy it without feeling like you're lost because of the Cosmere connections. And I feel like as a writer, I am skilled enough to say, here is this cool thing that a person is doing. They're from another planet, and introduce it as if it's brand new in a way that's both not boring, but also not confusing, and just let it happen in the book. And that's what's happening in Tress with some of the things, right? Like the Aethers are not from her planet; they are somewhere else. And Dragon's not from her planet, and some of the stuff that's happening relating to Elantris not from her planet. But I feel like it works in the context of the story, and it doesn't feel confusing. You don't feel like you're left out.
Right.
Hopefully. My goal is that when you read those other books, you're like, oh, that's where this came from, rather than reading this book and feeling lost.
Well, my mom, who has not read any other Cosmere books yet, she has Alex gave her the Mistborn series, but she hasn't read it yet. Wasn't confused at all with the characters and everything in Tress. So
I think the idea of dragons and bargains and things like that is something that people can easily understand, even if they haven't read the book I haven't written yet, which takes place on the planet where we kind of find out more about that whole society. And I think that's just kind of something that I feel like I should be able to do. I should have that skill level to go a little further than I had been going. So there you go.
Asmodeus9 says, is there a pattern to when the seed stops, similar to how the high storms on Roshar have a pattern?
Not one that anyone in world through studying has been able to figure out.
Take that cool. For what you will.
Mm-hmm.
Scotch the Piper says, who is Hoyd as the narrator telling the story to?
It is, I believe that is a Raffo in that I believe it is evident in the books. Well, I believe some of it is evident, not the specific individuals, but this is far enough in the future of the Cosmere that I don't want to talk about individuals he might be speaking to. You can figure out the general tone, and people have. It was very clear, I think, to fans when they started posting. So you can ask on a fan forum if you want them to give their thoughts, but I'm not going to speak more than that. So our first Raffo of the night.
Yeah, Mineton129 says, "Oh, come on."
Mm-hmm. there's stuff that is relating to all of this that I can't even talk about yet because it gives too many spoilers. I'll be able to talk about them soon. So give me a couple years and I can start talking more about timeline and when certain things are happening that I just can't do at the moment because of certain spoilerific reasons.
That's fantastic.
Ladder Contact 6814 says, what are the other 6 types of spores we didn't get to see in the book? Were there any that you really wanted to include but couldn't?
No, I mean, when I've written books, I tend to gravitate toward a couple of the Aethers that are really the most dynamic for kind of action scenes and things like that. Some of the other Aethers are there for the necessity of the future of the Cosmere. For instance, Zephyr, while very useful in this for firing cannons and stuff, is really there so that we can have propellant in space by just add water and make yourself some extra propellant and atmosphere. Kind of a low-tech, there's better tech ways, but a low-tech way to, hey, we've got Zephyr Aether, it's breathable, it makes breathable air. And so if we've got water and a barrel of this stuff, then we'll be able to breathe. So there are some of the Aethers that are there for that sort of reason, so that we can have, pneumatic weaponry and some easy access to emergency propellant in space and stuff like that. But Verdant is the one that I just keep coming back to. That one and Rosite as making for the kind of most dynamic storytelling. We'll see what I do with some of the others. I'm not going to answer what the ones I haven't mentioned are because I am saving them for future books to be used and to be interesting and engaging with them.
Very cool.
So
I always imagined that there was, like in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, when Willy Wonka makes that gum that tastes like a full turkey dinner, that one of the spores would just be completely ridiculous like that, like that you could put it in your mouth and it would turn into your favorite meal or something like that. So that's where I would have gone with it, which is why it's good I'm not writing the books.
So related to Willy Wonka, and this question's just from me for the meme, is there a relative Uncle Joe? Is that his name in Willy Wonka? Is there an Uncle Joe type person in the Cosmere that you equate on that same level?
I have no idea what you're even talking
okay,
about. Like
never
I know
mind.
who Uncle Joe is, but
there's a lot of Uncle Joe hate because he sits in bed for 20 years saying he can't work. Grandpa Joe, thank you.
Grandpa Joe.
And then jumps up as soon as he gets to go to a candy factory.
Yes, you cannot take a road doll that literally. Is what I would say. I understand the memes; they're funny, but you just cannot take Roald Dahl that literally. That's not what Roald Dahl is about. Grandpa Joe is not. I am an invalid and can't help. That's not the tone. It is whimsical, and the joy of this thing legitimately healed him. Is how you kind of have to take Grandpa Joe for it for the whole story to even function. So.
Have you seen the subreddit related to that?
No, I haven't. Is there one?
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
That seems like it would be really funny. And I would bet that they all understand. You can't take Uncle Joe that way. But when you do, it becomes funny. And that's why we have memes. So I don't know who the Uncle Joe would be. Some would argue that it's Hoyd for not doing more for what he, in places where he possibly could.
I have a question right here from the Sixth Scholar, but you may not want to answer it.
Okay.
It says, where does Tress take place in the overall Cosmere timeline? The telling of the story, not the story itself, or both, if you want to answer.
So that is a RAFO. My goal right now is to get you a coordinated Cosmere timeline of books by the time I start Stormlight 6. But we will see. That's I've promised that for years, and I keep pushing it back. So
That's a big deal.
From Striker EZ, they say, what was going on with design during the story? Was she affected by Hoyd's curse?
So, Brafo, you will maybe get an answer someday. Maybe, but Brafo.
Zabish says, if the moons are constantly pouring out spores, how do the oceans not fill up? Do they degrade eventually, or is there another method?
Yes, they degrade eventually. I'll be perfectly frank with you. My science on this, I have not gone to all of my normal science routes. The only one of the secret projects that we did a lot of the scientific work on is 4, because of how tied into the rest of the Cosmere it is. I have some sort of plausible wiggle room on book 1 because Hoyd is telling the story, and he can get some things wrong. Where I am right now is the seed is partially involved in the way that the spores degrade. And that's part of what causes it. You got this decomposition of a fantastical sort happening deep down, and that is causing the seed. But I have not run the science on this. Like, Tress is me pushing the limits of, like, all of my books straddle this on this continuum between fully scientific and fully fantastical, and I tend to sit like over on this side, right, where it's like Stormlight. I'm gonna work out all of these things, but I write fantasy, and once in a while I want to stray into the whimsical, and I purposely did it on Tress. I'm gonna push the boundaries of what I can do and still have it be reasonable that it could exist with fantastical resources. and go kind of as far whimsical as I feel comfortable doing. That isn't to say that that you should consider this non-canon. It is absolutely canon. But what it means is I didn't start with what's the science of this. I started with what is the really interesting story I want to tell, and let's tell the story there. And if it comes down that the science just can't work, well, the answer is a wizard did it. Right? Like there. I have enough access to fantastical explanations for the things that happen that I can make this work. But it is me pushing the boundaries of that. And you're probably well aware of that, having read the book at this point, those who are watching. And so know that I've got general impressions, such as spores are degrading, the way that they're degrading is actually causing the seethe, much in a kind of an accelerated version of how methane comes up through decomposition and whatnot, and that's what we're doing. But the water cycle is really tricky. I have some instincts on how that works, but I'm not even going to talk about them because I don't want to canonize that, right?
Sure.
Because the water cycle is a really tricky thing on this planet in particular.
Yeah, I imagined, like, as I was thinking about the world, when you visualize like rivers dumping into the ocean, and those points where that happens is going to be pretty spectacular.
Yes, it
Like,
is.
thinking of lava dumping into the ocean on our world and how cool that is. But seeing a river empty into the Crimson Sea.
Yep.
I need to witness that. That'd be very cool.
So far, my favorite comment of the night just came from your answer right there, and it was from Jeff Frazier, who said, "Was that whimsical with a capital H?"
No. Good question. What an excellent question. Whimsy is one of the shards of Etnalcium, one of the gods.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Perfect response. Cool. Mm-hmm. Another one from Striker EZ. Is there any chance we could get a map for this world at some point? I was very surprised to not see one at the start, and it would have helped a lot in visualizing the seas and how they relate to the different islands.
That's a good idea. We maybe should have done that. The issue is running that through continuity. We should do it someday, but it's going to take a little extra work just to make sure on the continuity of that one. So yeah, there is a chance you can get a map on this.
And how about we do a giveaway for the last 5 of the
last 5.
The
so
Doom
if you weren't
Slugs.
here, first off, by the way, this is the spoiler version, half of the stream. So if you couldn't tell, but we have these little Doom Slugs made using our Doom Slug molds out of lead-free pewter, which our molds will go up to 400 degrees. 450. And so you can, we have proven you can do pewter with them, and we're going to give away some. So.
And if you want to enter to win, we have some, okay. All you have to do is type pewter into the chat and on YouTube. Sorry for everyone else. That's PEWTER. Please only put it in once. If you do it twice, you will be removed from the giveaway.
Yep, the bot does it automatically.
Yeah, the bot does it automatically. And then we will draw names in a few minutes and announce those winners and how to, I guess, claim your Doom Slug.
Yep. And we will send you metal Doom Slugs.
We will.
This one is mine.
And this is open, I think, to anywhere.
Yeah,
We have no anywhere we ship.
Yep. So.
And in the meantime, we have a question from Jaffa.
Hello, Jaffa.
Yes. What does the cognitive realm of Lumar look like?
I'm gonna raffo that for now. I've been playing a little bit with the cognitive realm on some of these planets, so I will raffo it for now. They basically asking, do we still have the same inversion going on? And I'm gonna say it's a little weirder than normal. And Shades Mars often a little weird. So.
And I'm gonna ask a question for myself again. Hopefully the chat will forgive me. So when Isaac, I believe it was Isaac who came up with the world name, is that?
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
When he and I were talking and he told me that it was Lumar, I was like, oh, that's like lunar, just with an N or an M. Is that something that crossed your mind? Was that intentional? Were you okay with that?
So Yes, that's part of why I liked it. But he has some very good rationale for the name, and I'll maybe let him tell that story at some point. But he kind of gave me the explanation. The reason for that is he looks out for you guys, because I don't always name the worlds when I write stories like this, because I'm like, they just call it the world. They don't name their world. Like, our world is named Earth because Earth is dirt, right? Like, and so Isaac always pushes me and says, all right, let's name this world. Let's name this one. And so I come up with them sometimes. Sometimes he comes up with them.
Excellent. From some anonymous, they say, back when Tress was first announced, you said that you were imagining the moons and seas as being arranged like the faces of a D12 die.
Yes.
Did the scientists, in quotes, who you asked about this ever figure out a way to make this work, or are the moons something we just have to accept under the rule of cool?
Yeah, you have to accept. I mean, the moons on Lumar cannot exist without magical intervention. They simply can't. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay, like I said, with some of these planets. We're going to do other things in the Cosmere that just cannot exist without magical intervention, because otherwise I might as well be writing a straight hard science fiction series. And there are lots of great straight hard science fiction series out there that try to extrapolate what things would actually be like. With me, I'm trying to create a really interesting environment you haven't seen before, and then ask what that does to the people realistically who live there, if that makes sense. And that is a difference that I separate between a fantasy story and a science fiction story. And so I am specifically looking at, let me tell a story in a place that you could not get in any other genre from any other author. And then, I do treat it seriously, right? Like, this is canon. Those moons are there. But how are the moons there? Cosmological phenomenon that is impossible in our solar system or in our universe. Yeah, there are some I can get to work with real universe physics, and whenever we can, we do that. But I don't let that stop me. I guess is the difference between science fiction and fantasy. Is I say, all right, let's use Cosmere explanations. So.
They did have a follow-up question saying also, how high up are the moons away from the planet? Closer to hundreds of miles, like the ISS, tens of thousands of miles, geosynchronous orbits, if you have that thought out.
We have discussed it, and I think I'm gonna RAFO it for now.
That makes sense. Not lock yourself in.
Yes, we're not going to lock ourselves in. I will say my current impression is definitely not as close as the ISS, but not so far. Like, one of my inspirations, if you didn't pick it up on it already, is obviously Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern books, which, if you haven't read those, there are two planets that pass very close to each other, and when they do, dangerous environmental hazards pass from one planet to the other, risking extinction on the habited planet. And I've always loved that setup, and this is a little bit inspired by that. And I don't know how far apart those are, but I'm going to say I think it's further than the ISS, but who knows? Who knows?
I know I was trying when I was illustrating, I think in one of the passages it describes the moon and taking up a third of the sky in that view. And so like in this one of Tress here, very large moon.
They are huge. You've got exactly how I imagine them looking.
Cool.
But I feel like, I don't know, it's possible that we'll end up, this is why I didn't want to pin myself down. Because this is one of the things we will actually want to be like, all right, what are the ramifications? Brandon, here's what the ramifications are. Are you willing to deal with this? And then actually make a call and canonize it. But anyway, that's my feeling right now, but that's just me kind of talking about it.
And our winners are Viv the Penguin 129, Tap 836, Jesse Goodrich, Duncan Cohen, and Nathan Goddard. I'm putting an email in the chat. Shoot us a note. We will verify who you are, so
don't lie.
So don't lie.
That's cool. Congratulations. That's a great win.
Yeah, someone in the chat had a very reasonable request that we just make 2,000 of them, so everyone in chat can have one.
Yeah, that's, you know. Yeah, very, very reasonable request.
Egalitarian.
Nathan,
Yes.
did you hear that? It's time for you to get started.
Where did the idea for this come up? Where did the idea for this come from? Who came up with this, Talon?
I think it was Katie and Nathan.
Yeah.
He has
Yeah.
a forge and
Uh-huh.
mentioned that he has a
Yeah.
forge, and I think Taylor was like, "That's super cool. Let's
Yeah.
film the making of one using the forge and make it all dramatic, like forged in fire."
Right. And then it's this little doom slug.
Yeah.
That's just awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the opening teaser to Rings of Power where they're doing this, and then it's like,
The best part of that show.
Nathan has a forge, does he? What does he forge? Does anyone know?
He's here. if
Yeah,
you
where
wanna
are
know.
Do we want to get him in?
Yeah, come on in.
Let's see if he wants to even be on.
That sentence, he has a forge, is
Yeah.
something I want people to say about me. That's
I
very
want you to get a
cool. I
forge.
want a forge.
You need to
Yeah.
learn how to make swords and stuff.
That
Come
would
on.
be very cool.
Stand by, Brandon.
Are you interested in being on camera?
Sure.
So we've had questions about you having a forge and how you came up with the idea to do these and what do you make on your forge and here's a chair.
And now I'm jealous because I want a forge.
Well, I started.
Scoot up just a little bit so the microphone can hear you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I started woodworking mostly, so I grew up doing that, and then I took metal shop in 8th grade, learned how to weld, and that just got me really excited. So I've always liked making things out of wood and metal. Probably watched too much Forged in Fire, got excited about that,
Yeah.
so I got myself an anvil, made a forge out of a propane tank, and just go to forums, YouTube, learn how to make things, and
When did you
got
start?
excited. Probably about like 5 or 6 years ago with the
Okay.
casting and the forging. I think I've just always been excited about like solid metal objects. I don't know what it was. I think I saw some King of Random years ago where he made a forge out of like a coffee can and some plaster of Paris. And I
Yeah.
was like, I could do that.
I've seen those.
Yeah. It's not a very good one. It's not like a very good way to make yourself a forge, but it works. And so, yeah, I finally got around to making some, and I've done some castings in aluminum and brass, and it's just really fun. So I thought, I've done some with pewter. It's really easy to work with. And safe.
Awesome. Do you make swords?
I have made some very large knife-like objects.
Okay.
I haven't made a sword yet.
I love
but
that
I want
knife-like
to.
object.
Yeah.
Not wanting to.
I actually
yeah.
I did apply to be on
Commit
Forged in
to
Fire. I
some.
didn't get in, but
Oh, wow.
in the future, I would like to reapply. So, and yeah, I would like to make swords. someday.
Awesome.
Do you want to tell everybody where to find you on social if you're interested in that?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube. I don't post very often.
Really?
I need to start doing more of that. But the handle's at Nathan Ives DIY, and I have an Instagram which I update a lot more often, and that's the same handle at Nathan.
Yeah,
Ives
and we can put it in
DIY.
the description.
I'm going to
Yeah.
go check you out.
So.
I've fallen into that YouTube trap of watching more videos about making forges and forging. And if I took that time and just did it, then I would actually
Then
be.
you'd have one.
Yeah, then I'd actually have a forge and be making things. But I love watching the videos.
See,
and-
I want to have a friend who makes swords, right? In part because when I dedicate a book to someone, I give them a sword. It'd be cool to like be buying actual swords from people I know to be giving those swords away. Right now we just buy cool ones online that we find. So,
Okay, get started, Nathan.
yep.
Yeah, I'll
So-
practice.
That's really cool.
Thanks, Nathan. Appreciate you stopping by.
Good job on those, Nathan. That's so cool. Nathan Ives DIY.
Yes.
All right.
It's in the description now. If you reload, you'll be able to see it. It's not linked, but the name is there.
Perfect. All right, questions.
1 minute.
1 minute left. Ooh.
Oh, no, sorry. No,
Oh.
we have 13 minutes.
13
I was
minutes.
switching back because I was updating the
Okay.
description.
Okay.
This is a person whose name, they make fun of me every time I try and say it, and I never know how to say
Well,
it.
now you have to say it again. So
Well, I'm going to say it the way I always say it so I can continue the mockery theme. But Arshara, however that is supposed to be said, I apologize again for probably the 15th time. They say, Hoyd will probably think I have no life for asking this. How does Lumar still have water if the Aethers use up any of it, which seems to be most of it, that falls on the Aether seas? How does water get back into the system?
So I mentioned earlier, water cycle is the weirdest part, even more so than the moons. I will say that as part of the decomposition of the aethers, the water re-enters the system. I'll give you that much. So there you are.
Sorry, I was just told in chat how to say it. Rashara.
Rashara.
Okay. I will forget by next time, is what I said in chat. I'm not going to attempt this one either. We know that at least as late as Stormlight Archive Hoyd can't physically hurt people. Does Rena not know that, or did Hoyd regain that ability by the time of Tress, or does she just not want to risk it in case he can do something to her that wouldn't technically count as harm?
It is the last one. And plus, Hoyd's very good at doing things to people that do not involve harming them, that can get around his particular brand of torment, and she would fall into being someone that it would be easy to do some of those things to.
My second favorite comment is now trending in chat. It's hashtag slugs for Doug, which I find very fun.
Slugs for Dougs.
Slugs for Doug's. The one I was reading was just singular. He
Slugs
only
for
cared about
Doug's.
himself.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. Did you significantly adjust the number of Cosmere references in Tress of the Emerald Sea once your wife suggested you share this book? Was your first draft of Tress more or less Cosmere aware?
It was roughly exactly as it is. The later drafts of Tress fixed the ending, which all the pieces were there, but it just wasn't quite clicking, and so I rebuilt the ending. That's the biggest thing that I did. Tress was a little more discovery written than a lot of my books, and if you discovery write, a lot of times your endings need some work, and so I spent a lot of revision on that, and then polishing the prose was the other thing. Because it's Hoyd, writing from his viewpoint is just a little harder than writing a normal viewpoint, and required some extra work to make sure that the prose felt Hoydish, without being so in your face that it ruined the book for too many people. So,
at what point when you were writing it did you know that you were going to release it?
I wasn't sure, right? I wrote it. I didn't know I was going to do any others at that point. All I knew is I had this really great idea. I wanted to practice Hoyd's voice, and I wanted to make a gift for my wife. And so I did it not knowing that there would be any others or anything to it, and not knowing if I would release it in 10 years or the next year, right?
Right.
I had an instinct that I would eventually release it, but only if Emily wanted to. Like, this was a gift for her. I told her, you can keep this forever and never have it be released, if that's what you would like. Or you can have it as one copy that you only lend to your friends, that is bound in one volume, one single volume. And she didn't want to do any of those. She did want to share it, but I had no idea when I was writing it. By the time I was... So it was Secret Project 4 that I'm like, no, this is something I want to do, right? Like, that was when I'm thinking maybe I'll do a Kickstarter or something like that. And Secret Project 4 then was written for the fans rather than, like, I count 1 and 3 are basically the real gifts to my wife. 1 and 3 are ones that are written specifically because of things she said and for her as a person. 2 was written a little more for me, even though I gave it to her as a gift, because it's just like, I want to do this goofy thing. I don't know. It's just a thing I want to do.
Yeah.
And then 4 was written for the fans. 4 is, I'm like, if I'm going to do a year of Sanderson, I want to have one of the books be a legitimate moving forward of the Cosmere in ways involving some things that they will want to know about, because it's setting up important stuff for later on. And so I thought a long time about that one. The others were kind of just like, this is what I feel like writing right now. And that one was, I want to do something. I want to have another, a large piece to the puzzle rather than a small piece to the puzzle. And so 4 is for you. And 4 is the one that I think is, in that regard, the least general interest. That one I worry a little bit. Like it does stand on its own, but it's the only one I worry about if you haven't read any of my other books, picking
Sure.
up, being like, what is this?
Yeah.
The rest of them I feel like you can just pick up and just, it's a great introduction to my work. 4 I'm not as certain on. So
That's exciting, though.
yeah.
It when you were talking about these books, in being for Emily, a thought that crossed my mind is I wonder if there are people today doing like illuminated manuscripts of a book.
Oh yeah.
Because how cool would that be
That
to
would
have
be.
this all written out by hand in one copy done that way? So
See, I envy you visual artists because most visual artists I know, they can go do an art piece and take a little bit of time and make something really individual and special for somebody.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder for me with prose
Sure.
to do that, and it's a little less spectacular to show off, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like, here's this thing. Now it'll take you a week
Right.
to get through
That's
it,
right.
to experience it. Whereas, when someone, paints a painting for, your birthday and shows it off, it's just like an immediate, the prestige,
Right.
the reveal of that is dynamic. So I've always envied, you can go to conventions and be like, we're going to do a speed paint
yeah.
of this model for charity. When I tried to do that once for writing, it was a miserable experience.
Maybe haikus. Maybe
yeah.
you could go and do custom haikus for
Custom
people.
IQs. I think ChatGPT is so much better at that than
it is kind of amazing.
The place for me to do that has been replaced already by AI.
Yeah. Crazy world.
Mm-hmm.
Escobar says the Iriali left at least 300 years prior to Tress's story. Zissis was said to have been on Lumar for at least 300 years by Crow's book. Is the arrival of Zissis and departure of the Iriali significantly related?
I did that intentionally. Yes.
You're so good at those answers.
Zeisis.
Zeisis.
is how I
Okay.
say it. But yeah.
Well, that's how I will try and remember to say it next time. Condra Elemancer says, could you tell us something about Lumar's sea bottom ecology?
I've already done that, so
Okay.
we will
Sorry.
count what I've said earlier in the stream for that.
Sounds good. Lotus the Blooming says, if you looked at a spore under a microscope, what would it look like? Would it be like an Earth's fungus spore, or would they look totally different?
I have imagined, depending on the spore, them being different. So we'll go with this as a non-canon answer right now. But I've imagined verdant looking a lot like a fungal spore that you would see. Some of the weird bacteria shapes and virus shapes, but larger, obviously, than that. But others I imagine looking like sand, like pieces of sand, and yet others being more like perfect little sphere beads. Like the Midnight Essence ones, just little tiny perfect dots and things like that. So it really depends on the spore. They all, I think, will be different.
And a question from chat, which I had seen earlier when the title was announced, but want to know if it's intentional. Is Tress of the Emerald Sea named such so the abbreviation can be TOTES?
No, but
Okay.
I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
actually, Tress of the Emerald Sea was one of the very first things I came up with when I was working on the book. I started with a first line that was to evoke The Hobbit, right? Because I wanted to feel The Hobbit was one of the kind of touchstones in my head for this, along with Stardust and Princess Bride, the book, and I wanted a simple start-off line that didn't have a Once Upon a Time in it. That was just and I started there, and then I started immediately working on the world building and things like that. And one of the first lines I wrote down in my notes file was Tress of the Emerald Sea. And that stuck, and so I went with it. The Aethers go all the way back to Aether of Night, which is one of my unpublished novels written. It's my 11th or 10th book. 10th book, I think. And I wrote 13 before I published. So 3 books before Stormlight and 4 books after after Elantris. And in that, the Aethers are the major magic system, and they've always been part of the Cosmere. They show up repeatedly all through the books. People have little bits of them and things. So I already knew what the Aethers did, but this is a different interpretation of them, even from the other appearances you will see. So.
Madness Lemon says, what exactly do the humans that serve Zysis, is that how you said it, do? He promises that they would have engaging work, but would that just entail maintaining his home beneath the spores or assisting in his research?
There are many, or how should I say, there are select individuals who assist with the research, and he is studying the water cycle and the decomposition of the spores at the bottom of the ocean, and is very, very interested in that. And some of those who work with him are allowed into that work as well. Some just take care of things, and certain individuals may not be of a temperament to ever do more than that.
There's a follow-up question wondering how honest can we assume he was being when talking about how his slaves are treated?
Pretty honest. Dragons on Yulin are deities, and they view themselves as deities, and they are generally quite trustworthy in the way that they say things, but they are also quite imperious as a general rule, because you are an immortal being that is worshipped as a god, and that gets in your head and does things to you. So.
Well, no reason to lie when you're all powerful.
Yeah. Or if at least you think you are.
If you think you are.
It's 8:00. Do we want to wrap up or do one more question?
Let's do one more question then.
This is from a friend of the program, Loose Theron Telescope.
Hey.
Are the Aethers the moons or just on the moons?
On the moons. Good question. They are on the moons. The moons are not 100% Aether. There we are.
Oh, okay.
On the moon. So thank you, Loose Theron Telescope. There we are. Howard, thank you so much.
Yeah, honored to be here.
Sorry,
Thank you
that
for
second
having
hour
me.
is more detailed Cosmere questions and less cool art questions.
Hey,
but
that's cool. I learned a lot. That was very cool.
we appreciate having you. And we will try to have Steve on probably near the end of, hopefully once everyone has their books, we'll have Steve on and talk about his. But we will look forward to having you some more in the future if you're willing to come back. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
thank you guys so much. You take care. I've been your author this evening. Go enjoy a book that should be coming to you
4 hours from exactly.
4 hours
4
from
hours.
now.
Yep.
So.
Exciting.